Welcome to the FF Forge. My name is Steve, and what a freaking fun season this is shaping up to be. How freaking crazy is this NFL season? I'm loving it. Who in their right mind had Pittsburgh beating Tampa Bay today? The Jets beating Green Bay. Atlanta beating the 49ers. The Giants beating Baltimore. Seattle beating Arizona. Now, coming into today, if you had guessed that 2 or 3 of those things would come true, you wouldn't have been some sort of savant for thinking so. But let's think back to prior to the season beginning. Not a freaking chance. I mean, this is just freaking fun. Think of all of the teams who came into this season thinking that they just had a pile of dog crap that they were going to have to watch all season. And here we are, a third of the way through the NFL season, and there are a lot of those teams who actually have some hope, and they didn't think they had any hope coming into the season. I freaking love it. I would swear, but YouTube. I mean, legit, they have some playoff hopes for some of these teams. It's crazy. And then some teams who, even for me, like the Packers, knew it'd be a rough start, but here we are a third of the way through the season, and there really hasn't been any improvement. And now we're starting to have a couple of injuries. So it's pretty cool. I love the NFL for all of this. I wish my Packers were doing better, but I like football first. And with that said, let's get right into just a quick couple of things. Not including Thursday. I kind of went through Thursday in my Saturday special. There wasn't much to say about it. And not including the Sunday night or the Monday night game, of course. So let's start off with Atlanta, who got up early up against San Francisco, and then they were able to hold on to that lead and, of course, score some more points to win the game 28-14. As far as Atlanta goes, Caleb Huntley may be the better back to own between himself and Tyler Algier. We will be expecting Cordero Patterson to be coming back soon, but I think that's at least 2 weeks away yet. So, unless time has gone faster than I recall. And my takeaway for San Francisco is that their rushing attack is going to be in a question mark of playing. You could not play Jeff Wilson in games where they are big-time underdogs, in games where we're expecting them to be in a negative game script for most of the games. So just keep that in mind going down the road into the future, because they really abandoned the rush in this game. Then New England absolutely clobbered Cleveland 38-15. And I look at New England's rest of season schedule, and it is fairly conducive for the 3-week trend of New England's offense putting up points. They've been doing a lot better in the last 3 weeks than the first 2 weeks. So that I think that is a trend that could continue going forward. Keep an eye on the second round draft pick from this year's draft, rookie Tyquan Thornton, who ran a 4.28 in the 40. That is in the 100th percentile, meaning ain't nobody faster than this man. And he also was in the 93rd percentile for the speed score, the 90th percentile for the burst score, and the 85th percentile for his catch radius. The only measure, at least that fantasy player profiler keeps track of that he did not do so well in is his agility stats, and that is true. I remember his profile very well coming into the draft, and he was expected to be a late round draft because really it seemed like he was a Deshaun Jackson at best, which, hey, that's a great asset to have on a team, but for the most part not a kind of guy who can carry a team or be a true number one. He kind of got there, but today he had the lowest ADOT on the team. So to me, that shows a couple of things. That, and also in the preseason, we saw some short yardage touchdown catch that really just showed that, hey, maybe this man can move in tight spaces a little bit better than we expected, than we thought, especially based on some of the draft combine results from him. So what that ends up telling me is that maybe we're wrong about his agility and how that's going to impact how he plays, how the team utilizes him, and if he can actually succeed in doing some of that short yardage stuff. And B, that the team is trying to get the ball in this young man's hands. He, they want to get him the ball and have him just go the distance. And eventually here, he's going to go deep for a big one. He is at the very least, somebody to keep your eyes on, and in deeper leagues, a definite stash. There's a lot of high upside with him. And for Cleveland, there really isn't a whole lot to say. It was just a rough day for them. They weren't able to do what they want to do, which is the same thing that New England wants to do in every game. But the nice side of that was in a bad game, the receiving option. DPJ, Njoku, and Amari Cooper were all fantasy relevant. None of them had bad days. The New York Jets and the Green Bay Packers, the Jets pretty much beat them from start to finish, 27-10. Looked for a little bit like Green Bay was about to get back in there, but some mistakes here and there just absolutely killed them, and they were never able to climb their way in there. So for the New York Jets, Breece Hall. Really, I don't need to say anything else, but I will. In the passing game, Garrett Wilson led the team with 5 targets, and Corey Davis was Garrett Wilson was the target leader on the team, so that was a good sign because that's something that I've been hoping for. Now it's only 5 targets. But on the other hand, Corey Davis, who I've considered to be the number 1 fantasy option currently in that offense, went 2 of 4 for 52 yards, most receiving yards on the team. And then for Green Bay, Bobby T went 10 of 12. He had 90 yards with on those 10 catches. So his best day, totally got that wrong this week. My bad. And then Romeo Doubs had 9 targets, the most on the team, tying Allen Lazard, I believe, right? Yeah, who caught 4 of his 9 targets, had 76 yards and 1 touchdown. Then we get to what started out as a bit of a slow game and slowly ramped itself up and ended up in Indianapolis beating Jacksonville 34-27 in a very strange finish. Jacksonville kind of had this, they were in the lead in a situation where really Indianapolis just wanted a field goal to push it into overtime. But they ended up losing. At least that's how I remember it. 1 second. Yes, okay, that took me a while, but I found it. That was correct. So Jacksonville was up 27-26, so just needed, I was almost correct. Just needed to prevent them from kicking a field goal to win the game, not just to tie it. And it looked like they were going to do that anyways, but then they let up the touchdown. It was a bad finish for Jacksonville. As far as Indianapolis goes, Pittman is back, and this offense may have found its groove today, so I don't want to discount that because they're playing against Jacksonville, because Jacksonville's defense is no joke. And as far as Jacksonville goes, the coaching staff still seems to be calling plays just a little bit differently, like every game, trying to find its groove, trying to find what works, what doesn't work with this team. I don't think it's that they're specifically game planning for against each opponent. That maybe it's a combination of that and just them trying to figure out their pass rushing balance, if they want to go with ETN or Robinson, or how to integrate those two into this offense seamlessly, as well as just even the types of pass plays. Some games, so like week 1 and then weeks, I would say for the most part, weeks 3, 4, and 5-ish, they slowly got more and more loose with it and had a deeper passing attack where Trevor Lawrence is, a little bit less accurate, but then weeks 2 and this week, really low ADOT, tight passing game where he's highly accurate. And so I just don't think they've found themselves yet. So that's just where it's at for Jacksonville. Moving on to Minnesota and Miami, where Minnesota beat Miami in, I would say, a fairly normal-ish game, 24-16. Thank God for Miami that and the fantasy players there, that Skylar Thompson had a thumb injury, so that definitely helped out the Waddle and Tyreek Hill owners. So I'll start off with Miami. Maybe this is a bit of a brag, but it's for a reason. For some reason, I thought that Mike Gesicki was going to have a good day today. Not quite what he did, but I don't think you should overreact to his 6 for 7 for 69 yards, 2 touchdowns. That stat line is very nice. I do think he's obviously worthy of a stash or something at this point. There was a week, maybe it was just this past week, where I saw some things in his advanced stats profile that gave me some hope for that things were turning for him. So if that is the case, maybe there's a future this year for Gesicki after all. And then for Minnesota, Thielen is trustable ... in games that have higher expected game totals because he's almost touchdown reliant. Especially for bigger games than like 10 points, he needs a touchdown. So you want high scoring games for that. Of course, that's true of every player to some extent, but just specifically for him, I would avoid playing him in games where it's, a lower Vegas total, essentially. Then Cincinnati beat up on New Orleans, kind of 32-26. I didn't really follow this game, I guess, a whole lot throughout the day. So I don't really recall what the flow was like. I wrote that incorrectly on here. New Orleans is not the defense that they have been in recent years. So it was, so they're not dominant, but it was still encouraging to see the Bengals offense improve as a whole. And just encouraging signs for that offense. For New Orleans, I would expect Jameis Winston to be back. There was a report pre-game that Andy Dalton may be playing into a spot going into the future. I don't think he won that, but maybe he'll get another shot at it. We'll see. Then the New York Giants go 5-1 to start the season, beating Baltimore 24-20. And their offense is building confidence week in and week out. The team is building confidence in itself, and there are some youthful pieces that are emerging on that offense, like Wan'Dale Robinson, Daniel Bellinger. Now, Daniel Bellinger, I don't think will ever be some big play tight end, but they do have a limited amount of good weapons there. So if this offense can continue to do what it's doing, and it should only get better. This is a new offensive coordinator there, so he might get enough touchdown opportunities there down in the end zone. And Wan'Dale Robinson is definitely going to be on waiver reports after this week. Then Baltimore, Kenyon Drake? Exclamation point. He had 11.9 yards per carry on 10 attempts, so you do that math, that would be, 119 yards, right? Yeah. 119 yards and a touchdown on top of that. And not a large, but part of the reason that he got as many attempts as he did may have been that J.K. Dobbins' knee tightened up. Probably was. Now, that's very concerning. It could even be a lie, because Kenyon Drake was looking mighty fine in the first half compared to J.K., and maybe they just kind of wanted to sit him to let him rest up some more. I don't know. But whatever the case, that's definitely concerning for J.K. Dobbins' profile. Doesn't sound like he's at 100%, and maybe even a guy who could tighten up mid-game. So that's tough. And just as far as Kenyon Drake goes, did look ahead at the schedule, and it's a tough schedule going ahead for the next 3 weeks. So I wouldn't get too excited on him, but he looked good. Then Pittsburgh got off to a decent start and stuck with it the whole game and ended up beating Tampa Bay 20-18. I don't know that there was a lot to take away from this game for the Pittsburgh offense other than, I don't know, just obvious little things that you'll see when you look at your players' fantasy points. But it was, the targets were spread out is what I am trying to show here, with the 7 targets for Claypool, 7 targets for Deontay, and 6 targets for Pickens. I don't think there will be any, Deontay Johnson this year, essentially. Claypool had one heck of a day, though. And then Kenny Pickett went out of the game halfway through it-ish with a concussion, ? I know he's in concussion protocol. Don't know for sure if that was a just because he smacked his head hard and they're, taking care of that this year. I'm at a point where I think maybe Tom Brady's really truly reached his last year, and that this Tampa Bay offense just may not look like it's looked like for the last 2 years. Sure, there will be games somewhere in there, but looking forward on their schedule past their Week 11 bye, it gets much tougher. So if in the coming couple of weeks or so, if some of those players have big games, especially like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, I would think about trading them away around that time if you can get something nice for them. That's it. That's my advice. Then the Los Angeles Rams went into Carolina. Did they go into Carolina? Played against Carolina and beat them 24-10. I think they were at home. It really wasn't like an encouraging game for this Los Angeles Rams offense. They kind of struggled against Carolina. Like, this was a slow lead that they built throughout the game. They did what they needed to do to win the game. It just wasn't impressive from everything that I could tell. They might have gotten some things working, though, because Allen Robinson did have himself a much better day. Oh, I thought I wrote his stats down. So you might find him on some waiver wire lists. I think he's just still a stash. I don't know if I ever talked to about him at all recently, but that's basically been my opinion on him. Is he's a stash. If I owned him, I would have tried my best to keep him on my roster. But that all being said, it's going to take like 2 more weeks that are at least pretty good or have encouraging signs within them for you to really trust him. So it's a long road for him to regain your trust, because it's been 1 week out of the first 6 weeks where he's been good. I'm not expecting too much from him fantasy-wise, especially that you'll be able to capitalize on. And then as far as Carolina goes, there was not much of a vision for this offense, in my opinion. They came out in that first drive, which is, if you're not familiar, usually teams come in with like 10, 15 plays that are scripted and run those plays, and then it's the offensive coordinator calling plays based on the game situation, etc. And once they got to that point, there was just no vision. Like, they didn't seem to have any purpose, from everything that I could tell, as to a way to get that offense moving on a consistent basis in any way. So not a great showing there for Coach Week 1 after a first drive that was looking like, oh, cool. We figured this out. Get the ball in Christian McCaffrey's hands. But then there was just nothing. And this is not an injury, but Robbie Anderson got himself replaced by Terrace Marshall, I believe, in the game. So that might be a name to think about. Probably not with this offense. But he then, I assume, started an argument with his coach or something, and he was kicked off of his own sidelines by his own coaching staff. So, yeah. And then Seattle beat Arizona 19-9. This is definitely one of the games that you could have predicted that Seattle would win, just based on how both of these teams have been playing. They might have even been favorites, for all I know. For all I remember, I should say. I should know. But for Seattle, the main thing here is that Noah Fant continues his rise, so he is starting to do things, and he had a pretty good day here. 6 of 7 for 45 yards. And Kenneth Walker. No, he had a really good day. Just under 100 yards, I believe, a touchdown, a few catches for some decent yardage too. So it was a good, promising day for him, and his first NFL game as a starter. And then Arizona's offense continues to struggle, as I've said, like every week this season. And Kyler Murray rushed for 100 yards, so that I have not been able to say this season. Benjamin only rushed for 37 yards. This being the first game that James Conner wasn't the starter. So I don't know how much trust that showed that they had in Eno Benjamin. Maybe they did have trust in him, but he didn't capitalize on it with his 37 yards on like 15 attempts. So he still had a fair good amount of attempts. So I wonder if they finally said, okay, well, we need to add the wrinkle into the offense here. We need to start rushing with Kyler. So maybe that's here to stay. Maybe not. Maybe once James Conner back, it's not there to stay. But as a Kyler Murray owner, that was nice to see them use him as a running quarterback, like he is. And then Marquise Brown, unfortunately, may have had a serious leg injury on, like, it wasn't the last play of the game, but one of the last desperation plays for Arizona to somehow get themselves into the game, and yeah, that's not good news. So DeAndre Hopkins owners, I was looking forward to just being like a good offense. Now I'm concerned about them actually becoming a good offense once DeAndre Hopkins comes back. So I don't know. As far as consistently getting a lot of targets, though, that's probably a good thing for DeAndre coming back next week. And then Buffalo beat Kansas City 24-20 in a close game, as we would expect. Not as high scoring, but a very, very good game there. And as far as Buffalo goes, there's really not a whole lot from this game to say. So as far as Buffalo goes, Diggs, Davis, Knox, Singletary all got just some fantasy points that you could accept. So always nice to see that happen. And then for Kansas City, Juju Smith came alive in this game. He went 5 for 5, caught all of his targets for 113 yards and 1 touchdown. And also, let's talk a little bit about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. His trade window may just have shut for you. It's possible, but it's definitely closing. Here's my advice. If you are 4-2 or better, so if you're doing good in the season, then I would keep him. Unless you're going to be using him as like a 2-for-1 to really, really strengthen a spot, get a Christian McCaffrey or something in some sort of 2-for-1, whatever the case, type of trades. And then the thing about Clyde is that I think that the fantasy playoff schedule looks pretty friendly for him. It's hard to predict when Clyde's going to have good games, but just based on the types of games that he's had good games in so far in the season, I'm guessing here that looks pretty nice for him. So if you are struggling, if you're in that winning kind of position, he might be nice to have around playoff time, is what I meant to say. And then if you are struggling, he should have another good game or two coming up in the next couple of weeks before the trade deadline. So if he has a big game next week or a decent game and then a big game the week after that, one of these couple of weeks here, there's your window. So I think that that's likely. So just don't trade him this week yet. All right. That is it. A few quick things. Goodbye. I will see you soon with the waiver wires. I love you. Thank you very much. Comment, subscribe. That's it.